The Oceanview Country Club's grand ballroom shimmered with golden light from a dozen antique chandeliers, each crystal pendant catching and reflecting the warm glow that bathed the elegant gathering. My parents had transformed the space into something worthy of a royal celebration, with cascading white orchids adorning every table and a string quartet playing classical melodies that floated through conversations filled with the confident laughter of the wealthy and successful. I sat quietly at the family table near the front of the room, positioned perfectly to observe the 100 guests my parents had invited to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. The guest list represented the cream of our city's elite: prominent surgeons, successful entrepreneurs, federal judges, and old-money families whose surnames graced buildings throughout the metropolitan area. My mother, Victoria Harrison, looked absolutely radiant in her custom-designed ivory gown, the fabric flowing around her like liquid moonlight. At 48, she still possessed the kind of beauty that made heads turn when she entered a room, and tonight, surrounded by congratulations and admiration, she was in her absolute element. Her jewelry, a stunning diamond necklace and matching earrings, caught the light with every gesture, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the pristine white tablecloth. Dad stood beside her like a king surveying his kingdom, his silver hair perfectly styled and his custom tuxedo fitting him with the precision that only comes from having the same tailor for 20 years. At 51, Dr. James Harrison commanded respect in both medical and social circles, his cardiac surgery practice making him one of the most sought-after physicians on the East Coast. His success was evident in everything from his platinum cufflinks to the way other accomplished men sought his opinions on matters ranging from medical procedures to investment strategies. My older brother Alexander dominated the conversation at our table, his voice carrying the confidence that comes from following perfectly in his father's footsteps. At 27, he had just completed his surgical residency and was already being courted by the most prestigious hospitals in 3 states. His wife Caroline sat beside him, elegant in her emerald silk dress, playing the role of perfect doctor's wife with the same grace that Mom had perfected over decades. "The cardiothoracic program at Johns Hopkins is really impressive," Alexander was saying, adjusting his Rolex Submariner, a graduation gift from Dad that probably cost more than most people's cars. "They're offering me a fellowship that would put me on track to join Dad's practice within 5 years. It's exactly the kind of legacy building that our family has always been about." Caroline nodded enthusiastically, her diamond tennis bracelet sparkling as she gestured. "It's so important to maintain family traditions of excellence. The Harrison name means something in this community, and Alexander is going to continue that legacy of medical excellence." I continued eating my perfectly prepared lobster thermidor, letting their familiar conversation about achievement and legacy wash over me like background music. They had no idea that the simple navy dress I was wearing had been designed by the same fashion house that dressed tech CEOs and venture capital partners, or that the understated pearl bracelet on my wrist was worth more than Alexander's monthly resident salary. "Speaking of legacy and achievement," Dad said, raising his crystal glass of 25-year-old Macallan, "I think this anniversary celebration is the perfect time to reflect on what we've built together. Not just Victoria and I, but our entire family." The surrounding tables quieted slightly, drawn by Dad's authoritative voice and the knowledge that Dr. Harrison's speeches were always worth hearing. Other guests turned their chairs slightly to better observe our family table, probably expecting another inspiring story about medical excellence and community service. 25 years ago," Dad continued, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of someone accustomed to addressing medical conferences and charity galas, "Victoria and I made a commitment not just to each other but to building something meaningful. We wanted to create a family that would contribute to society, that would uphold the highest standards of professional and personal excellence." Mom beamed at him with genuine affection, her eyes bright with tears of joy as she listened to the man she'd loved for more than half her life. "Looking at Alexander," Dad went on, his pride evident in every word, "I see that commitment fulfilled. He's following the path we've laid out, building on the foundation we've created, and he's going to take the Harrison medical legacy to even greater heights." Alexander straightened in his chair, clearly basking in the public acknowledgement of his achievements. Caroline squeezed his hand, her expression radiating the satisfaction that comes from being married to the family's golden child. Then Dad's gaze found me, and I felt the familiar weight of his disappointment settling across the table like a heavy blanket. "And then there's Emma," he said, his tone shifting subtly but unmistakably. Emma, who at 25 is still finding herself. Still living in that tiny apartment downtown, still working on her little computer projects, still refusing to pursue any of the meaningful career paths we've suggested. The words hung in the air like expensive perfume, overwhelming, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. I could feel the attention of nearby tables. Other guests probably wondering why this celebration of marital success was taking such a pointed turn toward family disappointment. I love my daughter, Dad continued, his voice carrying across the ballroom with the authority that made him one of the city's most respected physicians. But I have to be honest about what I see. Emma will never amount to anything meaningful. Look at her, 25 years old, no advanced degree, no professional credentials, no clear direction in life. Mom nodded sadly, playing her role as the concerned mother perfectly. We've tried to guide her toward medicine, toward law, toward any profession that would utilize her intelligence in a meaningful way. But she insists on pursuing these computer hobbies that will never provide real security or social contribution. I could feel 100 pairs of eyes focused on me, some sympathetic, others curious, a few probably grateful that their own family disappointments weren't being aired quite so publicly at such an elegant event. Alexander leaned forward, apparently feeling the need to support Dad's assessment. The technology sector is so unstable, he said, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never doubted his own chosen path. It's not like medicine where there's real job security and genuine social value. Emma's always been smart, but intelligence without direction is just wasted potential. Caroline nodded vigorously, clearly enjoying her position on the winning side of the family success equation. Exactly. I mean, we all support creativity and entrepreneurship, but at some point, you have to face reality about what actually constitutes a meaningful career. Dad raised his glass higher, commanding even more attention from the surrounding tables. So tonight, as we celebrate 25 years of building something real and lasting, I want to acknowledge that not every family story is a complete success. Sometimes we have to accept that despite our best efforts, despite every opportunity we've provided, some people just won't live up to their potential. The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear the string quartet's delicate melodies, the soft clinking of crystal glasses from other tables, the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore outside the club's windows. That's when my phone rang. The sound cut through the silence like a lightning bolt, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as every eye in the ballroom focused on me. I started to decline the call, but then I saw the name on the screen. Sarah Chin, senior editor, Forbes magazine. I'm so sorry, I whispered, starting to stand to take the call privately. No, Dad said, his voice carrying a note of frustrated amusement that was clearly audible to the surrounding tables. By all means, take your call. Let's all see what's so important that it can't wait until after your parents' anniversary celebration. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable, and I realized this was another test, another opportunity for him to prove his point about my lack of professionalism and social awareness. I looked at my phone, then at the expectant faces around me, and made a decision that would change everything. Actually, you're right, I said, answering the call and immediately putting it on speaker. Hello, this is Emma Harrison. Ms. Harrison. Sarah's voice boomed through the ballroom's acoustics, professional and excited. Sarah Chin from Forbes magazine. I'm so sorry to call during your family event, but we're on deadline for the 30 Under 30 feature, and I needed to confirm a few details for your profile. The room went dead silent. 100 of the city's most prominent citizens stared at my phone as if it were broadcasting from another planet. Which details do you need? I asked calmly, though my heart was racing. Well, first we want to make sure we have the correct valuation for quantum solutions. Our research team is showing $89 million for your artificial intelligence platform, but we want to confirm that's accurate for the Forbes 30 Under 30 technology list. I could see Dad's face going pale as the implications began to sink in. Mom's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Alexander's mouth fell open mid-chew. That's correct, I replied, my voice carrying clearly across the stunned ballroom. Quantum Solutions is currently valued at $89 million based on our latest funding round and revenue projections. Excellent, Sarah continued, apparently oblivious to the dramatic impact her words were having on my family. And just to confirm, you founded the company at age 21 while still in college, is that right? Our fact-checkers want to make sure we have the timeline accurate. Yes, I started Quantum Solutions during my junior year at MIT. We've been developing AI-driven diagnostic tools for medical applications, which seemed like a natural fit given my family's background in healthcare. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Dad had been criticizing my lack of direction, I'd been building technology that was revolutionizing his own field. Sarah's enthusiasm was evident even through the phone's speaker. The medical AI sector is exploding right now. Our analysis suggests Quantum Solutions could be valued at over $200 million within the next 18 months. You're really positioned to transform how diagnostic medicine works. I glanced around the table at my family's stunned expressions. That's the goal. We want to make advanced diagnostic capabilities accessible to physicians worldwide, not just those at major medical centers. One more question, Sarah continued. We understand you've been very private about your success. Why did you choose to keep such a low profile while building an $89 million company? I looked directly at Dad, whose face had gone from confident to confused to something approaching shock. I wanted to prove that the work itself mattered more than the recognition. Real innovation speaks for itself. It doesn't need to announce itself at dinner parties. Perfect quote. Sarah exclaimed. That's exactly the kind of insight our readers love. The profile will run next Monday, and you should expect significant media attention. Congratulations on making the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, Ms. Harrison. You're going to inspire a lot of young entrepreneurs. Thank you, Sarah. I'm honored to be included. After I ended the call, the silence in the ballroom stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. I could hear someone's sharp intake of breath, the rustle of expensive fabric as people shifted in their seats, the distant sound of the string quartet continuing to play as if nothing world-changing had just occurred. $89 million, Mom whispered as if saying the number aloud would somehow make it more real. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my simple navy dress. The same dress they had dismissed as evidence of my lack of professional success. $89 million is the current valuation, I clarified gently. The company generates about $12 million in annual revenue, and we employ 47 people across 3 states. We're developing AI diagnostic tools that can detect cardiac abnormalities with 97% accuracy, which is actually higher than most human specialists. Dad found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. You're developing cardiac diagnostic tools? Among other things, I replied. Quantum Solutions has partnerships with Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic. We're working on technology that could revolutionize exactly the kind of work you do, Dad. Alexander was staring at me like I was a complete stranger. Forbes 30 Under 30? The technology category, I confirmed. They selected 30 entrepreneurs under 30 who are transforming their industries. Apparently, building AI that can save lives qualifies. The conversations at nearby tables had resumed, but I could feel curious glances from other guests who had overheard Sarah's call. Mrs. Wellington from the hospital board was staring at me with undisguised fascination. Dr. Roberts from Dad's medical group looked like he wanted to rush over and introduce himself. Emma, Dad said finally, his voice rough with emotion, why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think that I was a failure? I finished gently. Because every time I tried to explain what I was building, you interrupted to tell me why I should go to medical school or law school instead. When I mentioned working on artificial intelligence, you said it was a fad. When I talked about my revenue projections, you told me that real careers required advanced degrees and professional credentials. I pulled out my phone and showed them the Forbes email confirmation. After a while, I decided to let my work speak for itself. Mom reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes bright with tears. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. We had no idea what you were accomplishing. I know you didn't, I replied, squeezing her hand. And I forgive you. But I hope you'll remember this the next time you're tempted to judge someone's potential based on appearances or assumptions. Caroline leaned forward, her earlier condescension completely gone. Emma, would you consider collaborating with Alexander when he joins your father's practice? This kind of technology could really enhance their diagnostic capabilities. I smiled, the expression genuine for the first time all evening. I'd love to explore that possibility. Family businesses should support each other, don't you think? As the evening continued and other guests began approaching our table to congratulate me and ask about partnership opportunities, Dad pulled me aside. "I was wrong about you tonight," he said quietly. "Completely wrong. You haven't failed to live up to your potential. You've exceeded every expectation I could have imagined." "I learned from the best," I replied, giving him a hug. "You taught me that excellence requires dedication, precision, and the willingness to help others. I just applied those lessons to technology instead of surgery." Alexander joined us, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine curiosity. "Emma, I have to ask, would you really consider working with our practice? Because what you've built could genuinely save lives." "Of course," I said, pulling out my business card. "Though you should know that our consulting fees start at $50,000 per implementation project." Alexander's eyes widened slightly, but Dad just laughed. "I think we can manage that. After all, we're talking to an $89 million CO." As we returned to the celebration, Mom announced to the entire ballroom that her daughter had just been named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. The applause that followed was genuine and enthusiastic, and I found myself surrounded by business cards and partnership proposals. Mrs. Wellington approached with her husband, both of them beaming. "Emma, dear, the hospital board would be very interested in discussing how your technology might enhance our diagnostic capabilities." Dr. Roberts was right behind them, practically vibrating with excitement. "Ms. Harrison, I've been following developments in medical AI, and what you've accomplished is truly groundbreaking." But the moment that mattered most came when the string quartet finished their set and Dad stood up to make another speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom, "I need to make a correction to something I said earlier this evening." The room quieted, everyone's attention focused on the distinguished physician who had commanded their respect for decades. "I said that my daughter Emma would never amount to anything meaningful," Dad continued, his voice strong and clear. "I was wrong. She's not just meaningful, she's extraordinary. While I've been saving lives one patient at a time, she's been building technology that will save thousands of lives for generations to come." He raised his glass toward me, his eyes bright with pride and love. "To Emma Harrison, Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, and the daughter who taught her old man that success comes in many forms, some of them far more impressive than anything he ever imagined." The applause that followed was thunderous, and as I stood to acknowledge it, I realized that sometimes the sweetest victory isn't proving people wrong about your limitations. Sometimes it's showing them that love and support can transform any family, no matter how many mistakes were made along the way. The next morning, 3 major medical centers called to discuss partnerships with Quantum Solutions. Dad helped me schedule the meetings,